I'm coming. Hold on just a minute. All right, let's see. Oh, yeah.
Close enough to start a war. All that I have is on the floor. God only knows what we're fighting.
So, yeah. Hi.
With Adele's 21, I'm officially entering a very specific realm of music. A miasmic realm with tendrils extending to just about every domain that seems to be adjacent to my own. Look, if this were Persona 5, then this miasmic world would be like mementos, the goo created by the fixations present in the collective unconscious. You'll never see it coming. For example, I listen to a bunch of shows on NPR, not just news. Occasionally, one of the hosts, like, say, Ophira Eisenberg from Ask Me Another, she'll express an opinion about music, one that seems like it's supposed to represent the plurality, the zeitgeist. And then that window to the miasmic realm will open. Then, coincidentally, another show like Marketplace and another host like Molly Wood will echo that same opinion. And then I'll hear it again from a tech podcast, like from Tom Merritt on the Daily Tech News Show. And then I'll read that same opinion again on a Boing Boing post from Jenny Jardin, and on and on and on. And from where I'm sitting, it kind of feels like an elaborate put-on. I mean, how on earth is it possible that simultaneously, everyone everywhere has unanimously decided that some piece of music is not only beyond reproach, but it's further taken for granted that everyone listening has heard it and agrees with the fact that it's beyond reproach. That acknowledgement of this music's greatness is a prerequisite to being a good and complete human. And I'm sitting over here and it feels to me like, how have you not heard Snap Noodles? Come on, the new song from the Pookaroos? I mean, it's the biggest thing since Calhoun Randolph's solo album last year. Oh, come on. Surely you remember Calhoun Randolph when he left the mail train? If I say I remember, can we drop it? That's mostly where Adele lives for me. I don't know her music at all, really. But every reference I hear about her is not just "this is great," but more along the lines of "humans know this is great. It's expected of you. There will be a quiz."
I can't keep up with your turning tables under your thumb. I can't breathe.
So when I originally chose Adele on the list, this specific album, I was really excited. This is an album I listened to a lot as a kid, going to school in the mornings, playing this on my mother's iPod growing up. It's a very nostalgic album, so I was really excited to revisit it.
Okay, so it turns out I had heard one of these songs before. A few years ago, I had learned Rumor Has It to play as a duet with Astrid. I knew the song immediately, but I guess the fact that Adele was the singer didn't really stick for whatever reason. And I gotta tell you, listening to it again, the same bad joke came back to my mind and stuck. Okay, this is dumb as hell, but you know that Bruce Willis and Demi Moore have kids named Rumor and Scout, right? So the chorus of the song in my brain became a one-sided conversation in the Willis-Moore household. Rumor has it, where's the remote? Rumor has it, where's my sweater? Rumor has it, where's my car key? Rumor has it. Mostly though, I heard a collection of decently executed songs, strong vocals. Adele's style here does have soul roots, but also a lot of early 2000 Gnarls Barkley CeeLo Green type pop as well. The analogy I first came up with when listening to this album and discussing it with Emily was this. If Susan Tedeschi is Aretha mixed with Buddy Guy, then Adele is Aretha mixed with Pink. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It makes for engaging listening at times. But I do have to wonder, I mean, by its very nature, pop doesn't stay pop forever. It has a shelf life. It's called popular music, right? But there is something worth noting here. After a couple of listens, it struck me that this album is actually something of a throwback to an older musical tradition, at least in terms of the way music is recorded. Look, when the Beatles came along, what they did more than anything else is they made the default unit for popular music the band rather than the singer. But before Beatles made that change, when it was just the singer, the traditional way to make music, especially to record music, was like this. Record companies would sign singers to contracts. They would then hire songwriters to get a dozen or so songs together. And then the record company would arrange for studio time, usually using producers, engineers, and musicians that were all employees of the record company, and usually using a studio owned by the record company. Over time, the studios and the engineers migrated away from the record companies for the most part, as did the producers. Studio musicians became freelance as well, since most people booking studio time were bands and not singers. And as technology progressed, the role of the producer evolved from just being the point person responsible for getting all the right people involved, to the point where today a producer is someone who actively is involved in creating the final sound of the album, often performing and programming the tracks themselves. So starting in the 90s, when you had singers like, Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, singers signed to record company contracts working with producers largely sang to tracks produced that way, where a producer did most of the work and maybe hired one or two ancillary musicians. And not to music necessarily created by a set of studio musicians like you had in the old days, like the Swampers at Muscle Shoals or the Wrecking Crew out in LA. On 21, it sure sounds to me like an older style production with a set of professional studio musicians and engineers. Yeah, in fact, here, check it out. Pino Palladino on bass, Chris Dave on drums, Lenny Castro on percussion. Dude, engineered by Andrew Sheps. Yeah, that's exactly what this is. Ooh, and David Hidalgo on banjo and accordion. That's cool. So for that reason, at least in theory, I dig it, or at least appreciate it. But as usual, my initial views are based just on the sounds of the music and not on the vocals or the singer. So, all right, Adele, once more from the top.
I can't keep up with your turning tables under your thumb. I can't breathe. So I won't let you
This album made me wish I chose an Amy Winehouse album instead. I think that's the best review I could give. All of the songs just kind of sounded the same to me, All of the songs on this album, except for like one or two, were just sad piano ballads, and I think Amy Winehouse would have brought more versatility. So yeah, unfortunately that's pretty much the only judgment I can pass, but it felt nice to revisit something I saw so dearly like 10 years ago.
Let me get this out of the way first. Just 'cause I said it, it don't mean that I meant it. People say crazy things. Just 'cause I said it, don't mean that I meant it. Just 'cause you heard it. So nope. All the nope, 1000% nope. I can't get behind that thought even the smallest bit. That is philosophically and morally wrongest, wrongity wrong. It's wrong. None of the other lyrics seem to be that egregious, thankfully. But unfortunately, at least for me, each and every one of the songs on this album is a love and heartbreak kind of affair. Every one of them. And don't get me wrong, that has its place. Every once in a while, I sure do love getting into a real kind of raucous love and heartbreak kind of a thing. A Jagged Little Pill or a Exile in Guyville kind of a thing. But when I'm trying to approach this from the point of view of looking at what might make 21 stand out in the larger frame of things, it just feels a bit well trodden at this point. But there is one point I think that might be worth examining creatively, though. The one thing that both Emily and I noticed, and were surprised at was some of the power dynamics, the inequalities of the power dynamics that are hidden in a few of these tunes. When I did my poetry reading for the turning tables for the music I created for this episode, we both noticed that having the same words spoken from the male perspective changed a lot on how the sentiment is interpreted. Feels a lot creepier. So perhaps if you have an interest in understanding the effects of dynamics and relationships as represented artistically, this might be worth some time for a bit, especially that bit in the breakdown section of Rumor Has It. There was one thing that bothered me, though, and that's note choices, specifically note choices in Adele's melodies. Basically what it amounts to is that she'll often land on notes that are technically in the scale, but they're not in the chord. I won't get deep into theory, but if I was teaching Adele to improvise and she played some of these melodies, I would tell her she's not playing the changes. I'll show you what I mean. So the one that got me every time was the chorus of Fire to the Rain. The chorus of Fire to the Rain ends in two chords, a D minor and a C. And she starts it out as if she's going to nail everything perfect. You know, she says, your name, your name. And if she would have stayed on that C, it would have been great, but she decides to climb it back up to the F, your name, which does not live in a C at all. The other thing I think I'm seeing in 21 is what I think is its place in culture after 10 years or so. Down the road, I think it's destined to be thought of as a classic, more or less, by a good portion of the population, similar to, say, Norah Jones's first album. However, at the same time, I also think this album is very close to living in the same chute, which eventually leads to oversaturation and syndication. Once upon a time, that would have meant the 800 number advertisements for compilations albums. Sessions presents Bread. If a picture paints 1,000 words, then why can't I paint you? Stephen Bishop. On and on, she just keeps on trying, and she smiles when she feels like dying. But today is more likely to end up like featured at Starbucks.
Okay, that's the end of my critique, but little baby Marzi. There she goes. Okay.
Under haunted skies, I see you. Where love is lost, your ghost is found. I brave 100 storms to leave you.